hear me? Is the mic on? Oh, there we go. I want to thank everybody for entering our contest. We didn't think we'd have that good of a turnout, but it was really great. And when I announce your name, why don't you come up on the step and then you'll receive your award, okay? For the best mustache goes to Marvin Larson. Marvin Larson is the husband to Julie Hansen. Everybody know? Okay. The longest mustache, or longest beard, goes to Elvin Warling. Will he please come up here? Everybody will have to take a look at these plaques. They were made from the Trophy House in Audubon. And if Ralph Schmidt is here, he did such a fantastic job. They have faces on them, they have real hair on them, and they're really, really neat. Okay, the handsomest mustache goes to Harvey Nelson. Huh? Oh, beard, okay. Is he here? He's here. Where's Harvey? Can't see it. Come on, Harvey. Everybody wants to see your beard. Oh, Harvey. Come on up here. Oh, I see. Hey, over here. This way. The reddest beard goes to Eden Bear. The most unique beard goes to Dick Bierke. The curliest beard goes to Ron Sherbrooke. Pardon? The straightest beard goes to Terry Olson. Is he here? Yeah, here it comes. Okay, next we would like to announce the costumes, and we picked the best dressed man, the best dressed woman, the best dressed couple, and the most unique, okay? And our plaques are actually little trophies, and they're 8 by 10s, I think, and a picture will be taken afterwards and by Wesley Torgerson, and we're going to put this trophy, or this picture, into the trophy picture frame, so you have it forever. Okay, the best dressed man goes to Dennis Warling. The best dressed woman goes to Ruth Erickson. The best dressed couple goes to Peg and Tim Brower. The most unique costume goes to Darla Nelson. Darla the costume that she has on, and I'd like her to tell her story about her dress.
This is my great aunt Randy Ron Knudsen's wedding dress. She was married, I think, in 1902. And it's all handmade. It's all 100% wool, linen, and all this is all hand-stitched on there and everything.
After the program, we would like all the winners on stage so that we can take some pictures for the paper, and those that won the costumes, we need a picture for your trophy. Okay? At this time, I'd like to introduce to you Junior Vegan, 1933 graduate of Lake Park High School, and the recently elected mayor of our town. Mayor?
Velkommen, Hassan, Gorda, Matilda dog. All those other good Scandinavian words that I don't know anything about. We've been waiting for you folks for so long to get here, and now that you're here, we hope that you feel that you have never left and are yet a part of Lake Park. A couple of weeks ago, I drove out north of town. When I came to Bergerson Lake, I stopped between the two lakes, that's Duck Lake and Bergerson Lake, and reminisced a little about my younger years. I looked across the lake to the old swimming hole in front of the Sorvig farm, then to Duck Lake and remembered the old haunted house that used to be in the woods up there. Then across to Wagenstein Woods where we used to have picnics, marshmallow roasts, and the sing-alongs. Further north along the edge of the trees there was a lover's lane. I never got acquainted with that, of course. These are all memories to me. It's been said when you look back, it's a sign of old age. I must have aged a lot these past few weeks as I remember Lake Park and the good things about it from many years ago. And I hope that you folks will also have many pleasant memories now as you spend these few days with us. Thank you very much. I forgot, I'm absent-minded. I'd like to introduce Mr. Gene Halverson now. Where are you, Gene? No. He's the superintendent of schools. Gene?
Thank you, Theron. I think it's quite significant that during this centennial year I take a point of personal privilege to let you know that Mr. Vegan is still in the business. The time capsule, which will be interred on Sunday afternoon, was the work of his creative mind. And believe it or not, he has asked me to help him do a little trench work out tomorrow morning on the hill east of the auditorium for the spot where we're going to put the time capsule down. Am I coming through? Am I coming through better now? Should I start all over again? You've heard me before. I declare that motion unanimous. Folks, I came here 11 years ago, and if Carl Narveson is in the audience, Carl, with your record of 11 years, I'm afraid I have broken it by 3 days. I'm starting my 12th year. And during those 11 plus years, I have come to know and to love this great community. Junior, I hope you get me someday and put me out there. I have seen a great number of things happen in Lake Park. Things that were done by hardworking, creative people. I have yet to live in a small town where, as far as I saw, there were as many creative and talented people. We have seen that in a number of talent shows. I have seen people pitch in with their bare hands and erect Lions clubs, Legion clubs, football shacks, build swimming pools with their own hands in this town that could not have been accomplished in too many. Not quite a year ago, I saw the makings of a great effort begin, the centennial. I could stand here all night and list the names of the people that have given of themselves and of their time to make this great week possible. But I think I would represent every one of those several hundred in stating that probably the most organized and hardest work of all was done by Lil Krogan in sending letters to over 1,800 alums of the high school and the many hundreds of you that are here this evening. It's a special treat on the part of me, one of your adopted sons, to welcome you, the teachers that used to be in Lake Park that I have seen and met today, and the many administrators that are visiting here during this week, to welcome you back to good old Lake Park. We have 2 more days of festivities. The school will be open all day tomorrow. I certainly hope someone is over there. I certainly haven't been. But the student council is supposed to be giving tours of the buildings that we have in existence now and buildings that they tell me that classes from 7 years ago find hard to recognize. So on behalf of the school board and the 40 teachers and administrators that are currently in that beautiful, excellent school that I represent for you, I would officially like to welcome all the graduates, returning teachers, and alumni. It's my pleasure also this evening to introduce your Master of Ceremonies for the evening, a good friend, Charles Anderson. Charlie graduated in '62 from Lake Park. His mother, Doris Johnson Anderson, is a Lake Park 1929 graduate. I hope I didn't give away anything, Doris. Charlie matriculated at Concordia, taught science for 6 years at Ullin, and is now farming on the home place. He has 2 youngsters in school, another one that will join us in a few years, and thank goodness Charlie still has a twinkle in his eye. It's a pleasure to introduce to you Charlie Anderson.
Thank you. When you follow these 2 gentlemen, you always have to think of something to tell about them, and there was a story that was told to me the other day that I think fits them. Both of them are quite active in the church, and they were at a church council annual meeting, and after the meeting had gone on for a while, the minister asked if there was anything or any business that needed to be brought up, and it wasn't long before Junior raised his hand, and Junior said, "I think we need a new chandelier for the church." And that sounded like a pretty good idea to the minister, and the minister said, "Well, is there anybody that has any objection to this?" Well, it wasn't long before Gene raised his hand, and he said, "You know, I really like Junior. He's a nice fellow, but I got 2 things against his suggestions. One is, I don't know anybody that can play a chandelier, and the second is, we need some light in this church." Now, the first thing on your program, as you can see, or down on number 4, is that I want to introduce the Ladies Triple Trio. And included in that is Evelyn Johnson, Dolores Lystrom, Marge Brower, Marion Michelson, Etta Olson, Marlene Anderson, who was a graduate of Lake Park in 1964, Norma Nelson, who was a graduate of 1948, Doris Nelson, a graduate of 1940, and Joanne Wallace, a graduate of 1954. They will be accompanied by a student at Lake Park, Melody Wallace. Would you welcome the Ladies Triple Trio in singing Dear Hearts and Gentle People? The suggestion was made that as part of our centennial celebration, we dedicate the classroom at the school used for so many years by Miss Lizzie Hanson, a teacher at Lake Park for over 43 years. It is most fitting that we call on Miss Ines Olson, former pupil of Miss Hanson, and she is also a graduate of 1923 and was later a member of the high school faculty when Miss Hanson was still teaching. Would you welcome Ines Olson?
After more than 50 years, thoughts of Lizzie Hanson still bring back many pleasant memories, a tightness in the throat, and moisture in the eye. These are the words of Dr. Owen Wangenstein in 1962 in a paper prepared at the University of Minnesota. He continued, her words of encouragement no doubt reflected the wise discernment of a great teacher. All of us who had her as a teacher concur in this. She was understanding, unassuming, totally dedicated, reserved, and hardworking. Miss Hanson's remarkable record as an educator covered 48 years. And during that time, she was absent from her desk for illness just 2.5 days. Miss Hanson was born in 1872 in a log cabin on a farm just east of Lake Park. This area is now part of the village. Her father later replaced the log house with a large brick home, which some of you will recognize as the present home of Mr. and Mrs. Walter Zachariason. She must have attended that little white schoolhouse which now stands between this auditorium and the hotel. At 18 years She began her teaching career in District 27. There she coped with 45 pupils in a one-room building. The school year consisted of 3 months in the fall and 3 months in the summer. Between terms, she continued and completed her college education at what was then known as the Moorhead Normal. During the next years, she taught in District 12, in Hawley, and for 11 years in Lake Park. Then she took a year off because of the illness and death of her mother. In 1909, the call of the West took her to western North Dakota for 5 years. She taught at Williston and Dickinson. But in 1915, she returned to our community and continued to work here until 1944. For 43 years, children of Lake Park were privileged to have her as a teacher. During the school year, Miss Hanson lived at the home of her sister, Mrs. L.H. Nelson, but she spent her summers at a lake cabin on Upper Cormorant. During these summer months, she enjoyed observing and studying the trees and the flowers and the birds in the lake region. Here she had time also to express her talent in oil painting. In this way, she was rejuvenated each summer so she could undertake the pressures of teaching active 5th and 6th graders through the year. It was a privilege to be in Miss Hanson's room. In preparing this resume, some of her former pupils have reminisced about those days. We have recalled the opening exercises, always formal, singing with Miss Hanson at the organ, reading poetry and stories, marching out of the room at noon to the beat of her triangle. Curt and to the point, a correction by Miss Hanson made a lasting impression. Everyone worked in Miss Hanson's class. She expected the best, and she drew out the best in her pupils. She was firm but understanding. Students were at their best behavior in her presence. Lizzie was not only an excellent teacher and disciplinarian, but she was recognized by her colleagues as a progressive teacher who kept in touch with improved methods. Besides the 3 R's, Miss Hanson also generated an appreciation of poetry, art, music. Her influence must have been felt by at least 1,200 boys and girls in Lake Park alone. Her dedication to her work, her belief in living a life with worthwhile goals, her stress on rules for a healthy body and mind, these rules have been passed on to 2 and sometimes 3 generations. Her ideals live on in the lives of her pupils. In behalf of the Centennial Committee, it is my privilege to honor the memory of Miss Hanson by presenting a plaque and a picture to Mr. Halverson, who represents the school. These are to be placed in the grade room in which Miss Hanson taught during the last years of her career. The plaque says, "This room dedicated to the memory of Lizzie Hanson." Mr. Halverson?
Because of a last-minute change in plans, we've asked the Ladies Triple Trio to perform again for us. They love to sing, and we certainly don't mind listening to them. They will sing the school song written back in 1906 by Miss Edna Gold, and sung so often at the opening of the school day at the assembly of the high school. And if you look in your program, you'll find the school song in the second page, and they would appreciate it if you would sing along with them. And if you feel like standing, you can do that also. You're welcome back for this song.
Come in a little bit. Get over.
Here's a cheer for Lake Park High School. We're true to thee alone. We have tried you, we have proved you. Your fame shall be our own. And from now your life is our life. And whether far or nigh, we'll swell the chorus singing praise to our dear Lake Park High. Oh, our high school days are golden, they pass too soon away. Let us catch the fleeting glory, pluck roses while we may. And through all that high school offers, we'll treasure you and I. The work, the joy, the friendship of these days at Lake Park High. And through fair or stormy weather, let fortune frown or smile, thy loyal sons and daughters will praise thy name the while. Though in time we may be parted, we'll have this lasting tie. We're true to white and royal blue, and thee, dear Lake Park High.
Thank you. Jerry Jordahl was born and raised at Lake Park, and he is a member of the 1941 graduating class. He is the son of Ernest and Esther Jordahl, both of Lake Park, and they both graduates of Lake Park, and Jerry is one of 18 Jordahls to graduate from Lake Park High School. All descendants of Elizabeth and Peter Jordahl, who came to this area in 1871. The Jordahl name, as you all know, is one that's recognized in our city, and we all enjoy the Jordahls. Ernie still goes down to the store and sits and watches come in and buy his groceries, and it's really a pleasure to see him down there. Would we welcome Jerry Jordahl next on the program?
Mama, don't let your children grow up to be prune peddlers. It's really a privilege to be here this evening, and I want you fellows to take a look around. I've looked in both back doors and from the stage, and I want you to know that never again will you have the opportunity to see as many beautiful women as there are sitting in this audience right now. I want to say a few words to you this evening about one of the earliest graduates of Lake Park High School. I won't take up too much of your time, but if you get done listening before I get done talking, sit very quietly because I want to hear what I'm going to say. We had hoped to have with us this evening Frances Twist, who graduated from Lake Park High School in the class of 1909. She's the oldest living graduate of Lake Park High School, and she's 90 years young. She's in good health and enjoying life and had hoped to be with us, but when you're 90 years old, it isn't so easy even to travel from Grand Forks down to Lake Park. Anyhow, Frances Twist was born a daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Gotta find my place here. Truman Twist. And those of you that are my age will be able to recognize the farm. When you think of driving to Cormorant Lake, where you turn off to the YMCA camp, the farm that sat just on the south side of the road, that was the Truman Twist farm. And she was born and raised there, and she attended her grade school in school district number 50, which is just down the road a short piece where the Comers lived. Now, there was no water even at the schoolhouse, so in those days they carried water from the Twist farm and from the Erickson farm over to the school so that the children would have water. When she finished with her elementary classes, she came into Lake Park and she stayed with the family of L.M. Olson, Inez's folks, while she attended high school. After graduating from Lake Park High School, she went on to Detroit Lakes Normal School and also Detroit Lakes Business College. She taught school in Becker County for some 10 years, a period of it being in school district number 3 south of Audubon, Minnesota. And here she met and later married Ottilia Harpster. They are the parents of 3 children. At one time, they lived in Hampton, North Dakota, and later moved to Grand Forks, where she still resides. In a letter in correspondence with Mrs. Warling, she mentioned that Maddie Stoner and Alma Jordahl sang the school song at her graduation ceremony in 1909. This song was composed by Edna Gold. She also recalls that during those days in school, they had a contest every year where the students would present artwork, and then it would be judged who had the best, and that would stay in the school. As far as academic work was concerned, when they had their 6 weeks tests, the grade they got on that test was the grade they got for the entire 6 weeks. The work wasn't averaged out. She also stated that these pictures were kept at Lake Park High School, and that through the period of years they were put on display and kept for people to look at. Also, she mentioned that a play that they'd put on in school when she was a student here called The Old Folks Concert. And all the cast wore old-fashioned clothes. I don't know what old-fashioned clothes they could have worn in those days, because we figured those clothes would have been old-fashioned, huh? She herself wore her mother's wedding dress, which she says was probably made in the early 1870s. Now, this play was coached by Miss Edna Gold also, and Miss Edna Gold was our first high school principal. She also mentions that Lake Park was known as the city of the Underground Railroad. And I guess if you attended the program last night, you'll know why, when the Northern Pacific had to dig that big ditch through to put the rails on. Around the area, they called Lake Park the city of the Underground Railroad. It was a privilege, she mentions, that Ernest Melby from Lake Park, who attended school in District 27 and was at one time a widely acclaimed educator, was the speaker at the commencement address when one of her children graduated from the University of Minnesota. The Alumni Committee will be sending her a copy of the Lake Park Journal, and I'm sure she'll enjoy that. Also a Parker pen, and a fine corsage. In closing, I would just like to thank all of you, Parkers, for returning your resume sheets. It was a terrific effort, and Lillian is the girl that took care of the whole work. And it's really a privilege to have you and welcome you here in Lake Park. Thank you very much.
I've got an announcement to make about tomorrow. When the alumni, when you all go up to school tomorrow, will you please go to your designated rooms, classrooms, and from there someone will direct you to the luncheon. And that way you'll know when to eat, and you'll be eating with your classmates. That luncheon, as you know, is tomorrow at noon, and the cost is $1.50, and you buy your tickets when you register. So you have to register first before you can get your tickets. There's been a change on your program. Lake Park's the Town for Me is a song that was written by two of our local musicians, Craig Asp and Louis Ronkin. And it was written, of course, especially for our centennial. And Dolly Bichetti was supposed to have been here this evening along with a couple of her students and played along with you as you sing this catchy song. And she became ill, and so we've asked Steve Larson, who's a 1981 graduate, to come up and play the guitar for you and have you sing the song Lake Park's the Town for Me, which is found on your second page. Steve?
Is it warm enough in here? We can turn up the heat a little bit. Well, now listen good, because I only do things once, and I'm going to sing this once, and then you're all going to have to stand up before you can leave and sing the song with me. So listen good. Take the cold winds of Alaska, if that's what you're really after. Take the hills and the country songs of Tennessee. Take my suitcase out and throw it. I'll stay here now, don't you know it? Though I've been around, Lake Park's the town for me. 100 years ago, this town began to grow, 'cause word went out, the railroad's coming through. They'd homestead on some land and give a helping hand to build a town, start their lives anew. Take the cold winds of Alaska, that's what you're really after. Take the hills and the country songs of Tennessee. Take my suitcase out and throw it. I'll stay here now, don't you know it? Though I've been around, Lake Park's a town for me. They came from miles around and helped to build this town with dreams of happiness and nerves of steel. And out across the land with farming tools in hand, they'd raise at dawn to work out in the field. Take the cold winds of Alaska, that's what you're really after. Take the hills and the country songs of Tennessee. Take my suitcase out and throw it. I'll stay here now, don't you know it? Though I've been around, Lake Park's a town for me. Though trains have come and gone, Lake Park lives on and on, 'cause folks who came decided they would stay. There's a peaceful country life for children, man and wife. It's our home too in each and every way. Take the cold winds of Alaska, that's what you're really after. Take the hills and the country songs of Tennessee. Take my suitcase out and throw it. I'll stay here now, don't you know it? Though I've been around, Lake Park's a town for me. Everybody now. Take the cold winds of Alaska, that's what you're really after. Take the hills and the country songs of Tennessee. Take my suitcase out and throw it. I'll stay here now, don't you know it? Though I've been around, Lake Park's a town for me. Good job.
The mayor asked me to inform you, in case you didn't know, that from the other evening when the Swedish dancers were here, we became the official sister city of Applebo City, or Applebo in Sweden. And in acceptance to be our sister city, they have given us a clock. And that clock is on display in Darcy's clothing store on the corner of Main Street down here, and in case you're wondering what it might happen to be. Along with that is the time capsule that's going to be buried out here on 4:30 on Sunday afternoon. So in case you run by the window and wonder what those two items are, now you know. At this time, I want to introduce a fine lady of this community. She's been a teacher in Becker County in the early 40s, and she's lived in Lake Park for over 40 years. If you happen to see this fine lady walking down the street or anywhere, maybe it'd be nice to shake her hand or say thank you, because she's done a tremendous amount of work for this centennial. And would you please welcome Frances Warling.
That was quite an introduction. We have with us tonight a very special, charming lady from the early history of our Lake Park School. And I know that there are some folks in the audience who will remember her from their school days. She's Mrs. Marie Bjerge, the former Marie Rogstead, who was an early day teacher and principal here at Lake Park back in 1914 to 1918. Mrs. Bjerge, who is 92 years young, was born in Detroit Lakes, one of 8 children of Mr. and Mrs. Tom Rogstead. She graduated from Detroit Lakes High School and Carleton College at Northfield. She taught social studies in German at Pelican Rapids, and it was while she was there that Reverend Christopher DeLager, an early day pastor at Lake Park and on the school board at the time, asked her to join the faculty here at Lake Park. Marie Rogstead was married to Albert Bjerge of this vicinity. The Bjerge family, and I know many of you remember them, lived south of Lake Park and attended school in District 27. Mr. and Mrs. Bjerge had 3 children, 2 girls and a boy. And at this time, I would like to introduce Mrs. Bjerge to you and her daughter, Margaret Cornier of Frazee. Right up here in the front row. Mrs. Bjerge jotted down a few of her memories of Lake Park, which we would like to share with you tonight. As you know, the United States entered World War I in 1917, and a number of the Lake Park boys were called into service. She remembers that a large crowd of friends and relatives gathered at the NP depot to see the boys off for military training and duty. The atmosphere was one of shock, but the city band of the early days did their best. Mrs. Bjerge remembers Mrs. Christopher DeLager, the minister's wife, struggling to hold back the tears. Her son David, and later Paul, was one of the Lake Park boys leaving that day for service. Mrs. DeLager and Marie Bjerge clung to each other. No one in the crowd could speak. Lake Park was left in lonely silence when the train left the station. The slogan during this war period was, "Keep up the fight on the home front," and a popular song was, "Keep the home fires burning." Mrs. Bjerge remembers, too, that Mrs. DeLager taught the teachers how to knit, to make mittens, washcloths, scarves, and finger gloves for the boys and for the Red Cross. Mrs. DeLager earned the reputation of having knitted more finger gloves and mittens than anyone else in Becker County. At that time, school programs were the best source of entertainment there was. A cheerful spot in town was Mabel Patterson's millinery shop, where the teachers gathered after school. Basket socials were very popular, and Mabel Patterson would furnish homemade treats for the baskets. The schoolgirls at that time were just learning about basketball, and one of the boys, John Horn, spent evenings coaching them, and Mrs. Bjerge urging the girls to practice shooting baskets so they'd know how to do it. In those early days at high school, classes were dismissed at noon, and after school, to the beat of Helen Vegan's March on the piano, accompanied by Earl King's banjo. On the 50th anniversary of their graduation, the members of the class of 1918 held their first class reunion at Deer Point Lodge. The members at that reunion included Kaya Carlson, she's still living in Lake Park, Myrtle Chernus, Albert Patterson and his wife Ivy, a former teacher here, Mabel Brixson, Thelma Kelson, and Marie and Ted Wagenstein, along with Mrs. Bjerge. Mrs. Bjerge also recalls that a tragedy occurred during her time at Lake Park. 2 young people drowned while ice skating on what we call Bergerson Lake, just north of town. We are steeped in Lake Park history. We have seen those pictures of the hitching posts on 2nd Street to which the horses were tied. I'm sure you look in our new history book and you'll see them there, the pictures there. There was quite a heated discussion going on in Lake Park. In fact, some heated disputes. And for obvious reasons, those hitching posts had to go. 3 of the local boys, and they may be in the audience tonight, decided to take the matters into their own hands. And on Halloween night, they removed all the posts off the main street of Lake Park. We are so happy to have Mrs. Bjerge here with us tonight and to share her memories with you. She is truly a delightful person. Thank you.
Since 1906, which is about 75 years ago, when over 4 high schools, our four-year high school was established, we've had 19 superintendents, the first one being Mr. Hargis. We expect that a number of our later year superintendents and principals are in the audience tonight. And at this time, I would like to call out some names of past superintendents, and if you're in the audience, we'd appreciate if you'd stand and be recognized. From 1936 to 1947, the superintendent of Lake Park was Carl Narveson. Thank you. From 1947 to 1952, E.C. Lee. From 1952 to 1954, it was George Erickson. And Ole Haugerud was from 1954 to 1956. And he was here yesterday, but he had to go to another reunion, so he couldn't be here tonight. There wasn't any word from Louis Tatter. We don't know, he doesn't happen to be here. Nobody knows the history of Mr. Tatter. Donald Rice from 1959 to 1960. Dan Melsness from 1960 to 1963. Melvin Hansen from 1963 to 1965. Wallace Davidson, 1967 to 1970. And of course, our present superintendent, Gene Halverson. Our principals from 1936 to 1942 was Even Silness. And of course, you all remember from 1942 to 1954, Leona Malman. 1954 to 1960, Jewel Thompson. Let's see here. 1960 to 1966, Donald Harsh. From 1967 to 1970, Tom Hansen. 1970 to 1976, Dan Harden. And from 1976 to 1980, Mylan Stone. And our present principal Sandra Block. We have presently our elementary principal is Mr. Wendell, if he's here. Next on our program, we're going to be hearing from the Six Pennies, and music has always been a big part of our school and of the lives of the Lake Park people. We have an excellent music system in our high school and elementary grades, and you probably noticed the great amount of talented folks that we have from our talent show that we had May 1st, and of course we had our centennial pageant last night. A group of high school girls known as the Six Pennies have been in great demand for many occasions, and they sure love to sing. They are all graduates of Lake Park. Cindy Saylor and Kim Krogan graduated in 1980. Rondi Schauer, Mary Christensen, Diane Olson, and Carla Johnson graduated in 1981. They are accompanied by Kari McIntyre, also a 1981 graduate. Would you welcome the Six Pennies? Another announcement. another announcement. Everybody here? No, it's coming. There's Historical Society has been open all day for ice cream and cake and coffee and whatever, and they're going to be open after the program, and I would invite as many as you would like to come over and have some refreshments. It might be appropriate also to inform you about the Centennial book. It's on sale, and it's an excellent publication, and it would be well for you to look at that book and consider keeping it as a momentum. Next on our program, we have a graduate of Lake Park High in 1942. She's a member of the local school board, and she has been for 15 years. She has served as the board of directors on the Minnesota School Board Association for 9 years. Is currently president of the state association. She also serves on the 15-member nominating committee of the National School Board Association. Marge has served on many state and national committees. The most recent one, a TV show entitled Minnesota Issues and Answers, which has had wide coverage in educational TV in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa. Would you please welcome Marge Johnson?
Thank you, Charlie. My, I'd forgotten that I had done some of those things, but he really read it just the way I gave it to him. Thank you. Mayor Vegan, Superintendent Halverson, administrators, honored guests, alumni, and especially the class of 42, and guests and friends, it's my privilege and my pleasure to welcome you to this centennial celebration. The first thing that I must do is to bring you greetings from the board and the staff of the Minnesota School Boards Association. As their president, it is my duty to bring those greetings to schools all over the state, and what a thrill it is today to be able to say that and convey that greeting to this, my hometown. So that's the first thing I must do. The second thing I must do is to remind you about the luncheon tomorrow, and that all former teachers and administrators are welcome to come. In fact, we would hope you would come, and that the luncheon will start at 11 o'clock. We will be at the school from 9 o'clock and on tomorrow. We hope you will be there. I had a couple of hours prepared, but I've cut it down a little bit because of the heat of the night. So sit back now while we reminisce just a bit. For those of us who have lived here for many years, and in some cases have passed the half-century mark and more, it is interesting to reminisce about the past. There are so many of us in this community who have been born and raised here, and graduated from high school here, and have seen our children graduate from high school, and in some cases our grandchildren. And for those of us, this is an exciting time. But whether you have lived here a long time or for a short time, you are contributing to the heritage of this community. You are creating history. You are building memories. We hope that your association here at Lake Park is such that you have a warm feeling for Lake Park, and that you be proud to count the time spent here as some of your happy time. I should like to quote from Abe Lincoln when he said, "I like to see a man proud of the place in which he lives, so that the place will be proud of him." This place can be proud of many people who have accepted responsibility for making this celebration possible. To name them would be to name everyone who lives in Lake Park. However, there are some people and some organizations that must be mentioned tonight. The Historical Society, the JCs, the JC Women, the Lions Club, the firemen, the Lake Park Journal and its staff, and the We Too, just to name a few. And then there is the Centennial Committee. And as I name you, would you be so kind as to stand and would you hold your applause? Because I think we should recognize these people with some applause. First, we have the co-chairman, Cheryl Lurleen and Dwayne Hanson. If you wouldn't mind, would you stand and just remain standing, please? Nora Wild is secretary, and the treasurer was a double duty affair shared by Morris Nitskorsky and Jean Halverson. The all-school reunion was handled by Lillian Krogan. The Dance and Food Committee, Mike Nelson. Entertainment, Roger Boatman. The pageant, Larry Swenson. Promotion, Wesley Haugen. The parade, Jean Brower. Publicity, Jerry Schluter. The contests, Connie Davis and the Mrs. J.C.'s. Religious services, Reverend Homey. The railroad committee was Donald Leahy. Fundraising, Tori Olson. Then we had Wesley Torgerson, who is the expert in photography. We have Dean Olson, who has been in charge of the sound system. Along with Lillian Krogan were Frances Warling and Lillian Bakken, who did a tremendous job. Would all of you people, I hope some of you are standing, would you join me in showing our appreciation? And to those of you that we have not mentioned, we appreciate your effort too. It is certainly fitting that we give you all a big thank you. You have done so much to make this centennial the success that it has been and is. At this time, I should like to call Cheryl Erleen and Dwayne Hanson to the podium, please. Would you mind coming up? I think the ushers will come up and help you up the steps. Would you mind coming, please? Dwayne Hanson and Cheryl Erleen, the co-chairman of the Centennial Committee. It's okay, Jerry. Everybody knows you're her husband. Go ahead. We understand that it was a gal right here in town who really instigated the entire idea of a celebration for our centennial. And I refer to Cheryl Jordahl Erleen. Cheryl is the fourth generation Jordahl to be associated with Jordahl Store. She is the great-granddaughter of Ed Jordahl, the founder. She is the granddaughter of Ernest and Esther Jordahl, the daughter of Jerome and Nona Jordahl. Her husband is Jerry Erleen. Cheryl's grandparents, her father, her sisters, and I'm going to mention her mother-in-law, are all graduates of Lake Park. Cheryl, on behalf of the Centennial Committee, it is my privilege to present to you a trophy of our appreciation and for your remembrance of the work you've done as the co-chairman of the committee. Thank you. Would you like to say something? It would appear that Dwayne Hanson is entirely too busy cooking chicken, or perhaps buffalo. I think it needs to be said, excuse me, that Dwayne Hanson came to Lake Park in 1963, and he has done much to coordinate all the efforts and for centennial plans. From day one, Dwayne has been knee-deep, and he has been involved in every facet of this centennial, and he has done a great job, and he deserves our own special round of applause. Okay, I think I have something here pretty soon. I read a couple of things lately. You know you're in a small town when you go for a walk and you can call every dog by name and he wags his tail. You know you're in a small town when you go for a walk and you have trouble walking because everybody offers you a ride. You know you're in a small town when the editor and publisher of the newspaper carries a camera with him wherever he goes. And now I should like to ask our editor and publisher, Jerry Schluter, to come to the stage if he would. Jerry, on behalf of the Centennial Committee, I wish to present you with this trophy as a remembrance of this centennial and as a token of appreciation for your efforts and your hard work. Jerry.
I want to thank you for this. I must thank Marilyn Anderson and Francis Warling and the Historical Society for all the work that they've done. I couldn't do it without them. And anyone else who maybe contributed photos for the book, really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to share with you some little bits of interesting history about our school and our town. For instance, did you know that since 1908, there have been 1,854 students who have graduated from Lake Park? It's interesting to note that the class of 1930 remembers that the popular songs of that day were Bye Bye Blackbird, Babyface, and the Pagan Love Song. The 40s remember Stardust, On the Sunny Side of the Street, Chattanooga Choo Choo, In the Mood, and the Boogie Woogie Boogie Boy from Company B. Now, some of those have been revived lately. The beat may have been changed to reflect the changing times, but they are the same old tunes. We remember Kaya's store, where we could buy penny candy, and 2 for a penny and sometimes 5 for a penny. Walnettos were a favorite. You could sit in a classroom all afternoon with a walnetto in your mouth and no one ever knew it. All our basketball games were played in the gym that is now the cafetorium. Our 6-man football team was unscored upon for 3 years, and Kermit Zachariasen was one of the athletes who contributed to that team. Our superintendent kept a cow, and some totally insensitive clod put the cow into the schoolhouse as a Halloween trick. Some of us farm kids weren't really impressed. Bonnie Solberg, vegan, taught English. She never had a discipline problem. She'd never allowed it. She was an excellent teacher. Don't blame her if I've split an infinitive or two. It's not her fault. This is interesting, I believe. Ines Olsen, whom you heard earlier, taught Latin and biology to the class of 1930, and she taught biology to the class of 1970, my older son being a member of that class. John Nelson was the chairman of the school board for years and years and years. We could see a movie at the old Star Theater for a dime. In 1930, a class ring cost $7. In 1942, it cost $8.50. And my grandmother, the immigrant from Trondheim, couldn't understand our spending that kind of money on foolishness. Rolling marbles down the hall was considered a daring prank. The Board of Education was a board, appropriately shaped and appropriately entitled Board of Education, and was occasionally used on the backside of some of the pranksters. Hot lunch was 1 entree, and it cost 2 cents. We can't let this moment pass without paying special tribute to Superintendent Carl Narveson. Mr. Narveson and I had a moment at supper out in the park, And he said, I remember you. I remember coming out to your farm and encouraging us to go to school. Well, he doesn't know it, or maybe he does. It was not us who needed to be encouraged. It was my father, who had been raised by that Thronjammer, my darling, dear grandmother, who, by the way, did not believe in the education for girls. Mercy. Just get married anyway. What's the point in it? But Mr. Narveson could speak to my father, and he was able to speak to him in such a way that he understood that it was necessary for us to go to school. I just said to Mr. Narveson, he came out and told us about school, and we never even knew it was there. Well, maybe we did, but we lived out in Cormorant Township in the years when we were not annexed to the school, and it was necessary to pay tuition to come into Lake Park to go to high school. High school then being 9, 10, 11, and 12. Our school board out there in District 10 had the foresight, and obviously the money, to pay for those of us who wanted to go into high school. They paid our tuition, and I certainly want to pay tribute to those people too. Now, no doubt that all of the educators who are here tonight have made a great contribution to public education. But I must get back to that very fine Mr. Narveson. He left an impact on a great number of people. And in my opinion, he did more for the rural students in Lake Park than anyone else, before or after. And Mr. Narveson, I extend to you my personal thank you. Like present-day scholars, we came to Lake Park High to prepare ourselves for that great world out there. Now, in spite of the differences in lifestyles, whether it was the 30s or my era, the 40s, or the present time, we have that in common. May there always be a Lake Park, and may there always be a Lake Park High. Thank you for being here to celebrate with us.
Thank you, Marge. Now we're going to turn the program back over to the Mrs. J.C.'s, who are going to crown the Centennial Queen and King. Queens, anyway. Here they are.
We've been working on this contest for about 4 months now, and it's been a lot of fun. I went to each of the gals' homes. Well, first all, we started off and we put a ballot in the paper, and everybody wrote and sent a ballot to me of the gal of their choice. And out of that, about 60 different names that I got, I took the top 5, and then we ran the picture and article of all the gals, and it was really a lot of fun going visiting. I learned a lot of things about some of these ladies that I would have never imagined who their brothers and sisters were. I can't believe they have relatives in Lake Park. Okay, first of all, I'm going to read a story about these gals after they come out, and I would like you to give them a nice warm applause. Come on up. Esther Jordahl. And Esther, whoops, wrong one. Yeah. Esther Malm Jordahl was born in Cuba Township at the Russell Larson farm site in 1898. At the age of 6, she and her family moved into the home in which she still resides. Esther was baptized and confirmed at Exo Lutheran.
She attended and graduated from Lake Park High School in 1917. She furthered her education at Concordia College and also Valley City with a degree in commercial work. From there, she taught for 3 years in North Dakota. Ernest and Esther grew up as next-door neighbors and were married by the Reverend Anders in June of 1922 in the home they now live. Incidentally, their home was built by the Lake Park Lutheran minister, Reverend Gardsmod, I don't know if that's right, in 1905. Okay, in 1908, Ernest's parents purchased the home, and it has been Esther's home ever since. Ernest and Esther have 4 children, 10 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren. Many interests for Esther include reading, sewing, crocheting, auxiliary, and Eastern Star organizations. Our next gal is Miss Emma Olson, and Emma was born on her parents' family home 3 miles west of Lake Park in 1884. She attended country school, District 42 through the 8th grade. In 1911, she married John Olson Sr. Emma has lived in Lake Park all her life. Her husband, John, passed away in 1975. At that time, she moved to her apartment in Lake Park. At the age of 96, I should say 97 because she just had her 97th birthday this month, Emma still tends to her own daily needs by herself. Emma has many special interests. She sews nearly all her own clothes, has made many quilts and afghans for her children and grandchildren. She makes dolls from soap bottles and designs all their clothes. You are always welcome at Emma's house, where she has many baked goods and always has the coffee cooking. Emma has 2 sons and 1 daughter. She is blessed with 11 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren. She attends Exo Church, in which she was both baptized and confirmed. Our next candidate is Dulcie Torgerson. Dulcie was born in Detroit Lakes. She and her family moved to Lake Park from Detroit Lakes in 1920. Dulcie attended Lake Park High School and was a 1924 graduate. She furthered her education at Moorhead State Teachers College. From there, she taught for 7 years in various country schools. Dulcie and her husband, Henry, have 3 daughters, 8 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. Special interests include handwork, gardening, flowers, lending Henry a large hand with all his woodworking arts, quilting, and traveling. She has spent a summer in Europe, a number of trips to Norway, and last fall toured the New England states. Dulcie and Henry have seen many changes in Lake Park in the 61 years that they have lived here. And I found out that an Episcopalian church stood where the Torgerson home now stands. And the church was dismantled in 1930, and some of the beams and woodwork in their house are from this church. Our 4th candidate is June Wall. June was born in Lake Park over the drugstore in 1904. She has been a resident of Lake Park except for college and teaching years. Her grandparents settled here in 1879 and 1871. Wrong. Her parents grew up here and raised their families in Lake Park. June enjoys reading, letter writing, music, and keeping the home open to family and friends. Very happy memories are cherished, including the time with Vic, her late husband, and their visits to all the states and 90 of the world's countries. An interesting note is that the site where June's home stands was first owned by Thomas Canfield, who planted trees on the ground the same time the trees were planted on the road coming into our town. Mr. Canfield was pleased to build his home here, as at the time it overlooked Lake Flora. Our 5th and final contestant is Elma Hedstrom, and Elma Hedstrom was born in 1896. She was baptized and confirmed at the Lake Park Lutheran Church. She attended District 12 Country School for 8 years and also attended Lake Park High School for 1 year. In 1921, Elma married Oscar Hedstrom. They have 2 children, 9 grandchildren, and 12 great-grandchildren. Alma has many interests, including crocheting, quilting, reading, and gardening. She also was a secretary-treasurer of the North Ladies' Aid for many years. Even though she is 83, she believes in keeping active and interested in the world around her. Alma is the second to the oldest of 13 children, and she still lives at the place where she was born. Our centennial winner will receive a cash prize. We have a plaque that has her name on it, and it says 1881 Lake Park Centennial Queen, 1981, and also she will receive a crown. And at this time, I would like to call on Mrs. Van Arnhem, who is going to crown our King of Lake Park, and he will announce the 1981 Queen.
This is Mr. Conrad Torgerson, who is sponsored by the Historical Society. He was born here and lived here all his life. He's a World War I veteran, one of our best workers in the society. He is 94 years young. I'm now going to crown him King of Lake Park. Conrad is now going to reveal who our Centennial Queen is.
The Queen is Emma Olsen.
As you can see, the greatest assets of Lake Park, our town, is our people. And this concludes our program tonight. And we're going to call on Evelyn Erickson to play a song for us, God Bless America. And this will conclude our program. We want to thank you all for being here. We hope you have a wonderful time at the Centennial. And would you all stand and sing God Bless America? Just a couple announcements. Don't forget the dances later this evening. And the Historical Society would be willing to sell you ice cream over at the old hotel. Thank you for coming.